God like that. Anyway. Amber, bruh, stop inviting me, bruh, to the mission that's cheap ass missions, man. Missions cheap, dog. Invite me to the double XP. I'm gonna come. I'm not gonna come with that bullshit. And then you be playing some kids too. I gotta make my money. How about my jet? My bad. All right, Bill. Talk to him about that fluoride. Call him Bill the rapist. When you got all these motherfuckers like, what's the fucking name? Bill Clinton.
Mr. tHE here. You know, making cavities used to be easy, but it's getting harder now. Mostly because of... Great! Pipe! Cavities? So I'm the pipe breath! Ah! Crap's got fluoride in it, and breath is always telling people to fix the streets, and check up, and fresh out of the breath!
Fluoride. It is hailed by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention as one of the 10 great public health achievements of the 20th century. In fact, for over 60 years, the American Dental Association has stated that brushing with fluoride toothpaste will prevent tooth decay. But is this true? Is there more to the story than what we've been told?
Triumph over tooth decay.
They don't want you smoking fucking weed, but they gonna put fluoride in the fucking water. What the fuck is going on?
Yes, fresh toothpaste really cuts down cavities because fresh has fluoride. The same fluoride dentists put right on teeth to prevent...
You ain't never heard nobody say if you get some motherfucking marijuana in you, run and see a fucking doctor if you swallow it. But if you get motherfucking fluoride in you, you gotta go run to see a fucking doctor if you fucking swallow it. We some fucking stupid ass fucking sheep. We ain't no fucking people. We dumb to the shit that we was told to believe in.
Safe and effective, and it's one of the most inexpensive ways to really cut down.
Anything we can do to help prevent cavities on children, I think is very important.
Shut the fuck up, lying bitch.
Fluoride is safe, it's effective.
Fluoridation community-wide is extremely safe and extremely effective.
Effective, that's the key word that he uses.
Science is on the side of fluoride being safe and effective.
Effective, yeah, I know it is.
There's no controversy about this in the scientific community.
In the scientific community, fuck the scientific community. Scientific community, a bunch of lying motherfuckers. Rich bastards.
But just because we've been doing something for 50 years doesn't necessarily mean that it's right.
Public health officials knew then what they know now. Would we have fluoride? Would it be added to our drinking water? Well, today a coalition...
Y'all go and fucking up their commercials and shit. Y'all don't want to buy knowing the fucking truth.
Doctors are taking action to stop fluoridation until it is proven safe.
Ain't no proven safe. It can't be safe.
first widespread commercial use of fluoride was for the eradication of burn. Since the 1800s, sodium fluoride has been a key ingredient in rat poisoning.
Rat poisoning, people.
These products were commonly used in and around the home to kill lice, mice, rats, and insects.
Now it's in the fucking water.
Not only a good way to kill rodents, but also an effective way to kill a man. As the use of fluoride became more popular, reports began flooding in that people died from ingesting this toxic substance. Headlines scream: roach poisoned in pancakes kills 11 men. Ranger takes dose of poison by mistake. Article after article.
Now, you ain't never heard nobody fucking dying on the motherfucking weed, and that's illegal. That's illegal. What kind of fucking bullshit is that, man?
During the last part of the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution was taking hold of the modern world. An unfortunate byproduct of this technological revolution was that it created the most toxic pollutants known to man. And the most hazardous and destructive of them all was fluoride. In his award-winning book, The Fluoride Deception, investigative journalist Christopher Bryson examines fluoride's disturbing history. Bryson notes that in its early days, fluoride was a widely known and well-documented killer. Documentation from early lawsuits against fluoride manufacturers clearly shows that fluoride was a hazard, not only to humans, but to the environment as well, with damages reaching into the tens of millions of dollars. By 1930, the aluminum industry was the largest and most influential fluoride polluter. Industrial giants such as Alcoa knew they had to do something. Vegetation and livestock near Alcoa plants were being decimated as toxic fluoride fumes lingered, rendering nearby cattle lame and crippled, even causing death.
But we drinking this shit.
From that time proclaimed,
You bathing your fucking kids in this shit. You washing your baby in fluoride. The fucking body is the biggest organ that we have.
also some of our young cows had lost their teeth. Our saddle horses were so crippled from fluorine poisoning, they had to be shot. The serious nature of fluoride toxicity was beginning to be realized. As a result, fluoride's threat to corporate America was laid out in an exhaustive review conducted by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Toxicologist Floyd Diaz warned of new medical information exposing fluoride's harmful effects. Danish scientist Hans singled out the aluminum industry, specifically Alcoa, as the source of much of the fluoride poisoning. Fluoride was causing irreparable damage, and the word was getting out. Alcoa knew they had to act fast. Their high-powered attorneys sprung into action, quickly buying farms and paying off settlements. Ironically, during that time, the U.S. Public Health Service was under the jurisdiction of the United States Treasury Secretary, Andrew W. Mellon. Mellon was the founder and major stockholder of Alcoa. He was also the founder of the Mellon Institute, an industry-funded research institute that was notorious for giving corporations such as Alcoa the scientific data they needed to defend themselves against lawsuits.
Wow.
The Mellon Institute published questionable and self-serving evidence that supported the effectiveness of fluoride in fighting fluoride. In doing so, the Mellon Institute rats had put a smiling face on what had been a scientifically recognized environmental and workplace poison.
Wow.
It was an
They should be put in jail too. They got paid for this shit. They fucking family should be ripped of all their fucking wealth because they got the shit on the back of motherfucking people. The misery of people fucking teeth getting fucked up to the point where they gotta go see motherfucking doctors. This is some bullshit.
By means of promoting it as a health benefit. The official human experiments began in Grand Rapids, Michigan on January 25, 1945. 107 barrels of sodium fluoride were delivered to Grand Rapids, where city technicians began tipping them into the city's water supply. They were the first to publicly fluoridate their water. It was to serve as the test city, and its tooth decay rates were to be compared with those of non-fluoridated Muskegon.
The study only lasted 5 years. There are no permanent teeth in the child born at the beginning of the study. It was an unblinded study. They did no measure of safety, and they claimed that there was a tremendous benefit to the permanent teeth. Well, there weren't any permanent teeth
Get in the baby mouth.
born at the beginning of the study.
Wow.
And soon thereafter, they fluoridated Muskegon, the control city. It's a phony baloney study. used to demonstrate the benefits, where there are none.
Unfortunately, fluoride's ugly side has almost entirely escaped the public view. As Bryson points out, historians have failed to record that fluoride pollution was in fact the biggest legal worry of the industries that were involved in developing the atomic bomb program. As some may remember, the Manhattan Project was a secret program which brought the atomic bomb into existence. But what most people are totally unaware of is the fact that fluoride was an essential element in the production of the element.
There's a guy named Harold Hodge that was the chief toxicologist for the Manhattan Project, and basically, in order to create the nuclear weapons, they needed massive amounts of fluoride. He was hired as a toxicologist, or part of the team, to determine is there going to be any toxic effects of fluoride in this project. Really, what they were worried about is they were worried about lawsuits. They knew that there was negative effects of fluoride. They had to basically invent this whole scheme so they could use the high levels of fluoride in the Manhattan Project to create atomic and nuclear weapons.
For more than 70 years, the Public Health Service has assured society that fluoridation is safe and effective.
And our FDA, they should be put in jail too. They should be put in jail too. They should be put in jail too, because they part of the shit too. All these motherfuckers should be put in jail. We get put in jail. How the fuck they don't get put in jail?
The impetus for the first fluoridated city, Grand Rapids, was born from this study. However, recently declassified documents show that this study was a complete fabrication. A trail of declassified Manhattan Project papers unearthed by investigative journalist Christopher Bryson showed that the toxicology department at the University of Rochester, which was under the direction of Harold Hodge, secretly monitored the Newberg experiment to, quote, supply evidence useful in the litigation arising from an alleged loss of a fruit crop. In fact, these once restricted documents revealed that as far back as 1944, the Manhattan Project was spending money on toxicology studies on fluoride. Why? Because fluoride was the key ingredient used in the process of enriching uranium. Enriched uranium was the linchpin of the U.S. military's fledgling nuclear weapons program. Fluoride became a national security issue. The declassified documents suggest that Newberg was simply another human experiment, one used to justify the interests and advancement of the nuclear industrial state. The final report of Newberg concluded that small concentrations of fluoride were safe. Yet documents reveal that the top fluoride scientist in the U.S., Dr. H. Friendly Dean, known as the father of fluoridation, secretly opposed the experiment, fearing that fluoride's toxicity would be revealed. Until now, Dean's dissent on Newberg has never been made public.
There's irrefutable evidence that the U.S. military, the Manhattan Project, makers of the atomic bomb, concealed evidence of fluoride's harm to their workers, to the community, and to the American public. One study was published in the
Our fucking government, what the fuck is wrong with us as the fucking people? How in the fuck we allowing these motherfuckers to run our government? You are motherfucking men that supposed to serve and protect the fucking people, and you are allowing these motherfuckers to kill the
95 laboratory workers examined. Quote, their teeth seem to be deteriorating rapidly, and their gums bled more freely. In fact, most of the hydrofluoric acid workers examined had few or no teeth left.
Few or no
They were
teeth
in
left.
large part toothless or nearly toothless. This information, however, was out of the published version. The published study merely notes that the fluoride workers had fewer cavities than did the unexposed workers.
They ain't had no
They
teeth.
didn't mention the fact that they had fewer cavities
So they didn't have
because
teeth.
their teeth had fallen out of their mouths. Wow. Since World War II, fluoride has been one of the most destructive environmental pollutants. At one point during the Cold War, fluoride was blamed for more damage claims against industry than all 20 other major air pollutants combined.
About to find out.
Fluoride was responsible for one of the most notorious environmental disasters in U.S. history, the town of Donora, Pennsylvania, which jump-started the environmental movement.
In 1948, the small mill town lost 20 people, and an estimated 6,000 men, women, and children were sickened by U.S. Steel's dark blanketing smog. Even the town's name betrayed its corporate roots. Denora was an amalgam of the first name of Nora Mellon, the wife of industrialist Andrew W. Mellon.
After the Halloween disaster in Denora, Pennsylvania, Philip Sadler, a chemist, went to Denora, and he was able to test and measure and prove that it was fluoride that had caused all those deaths.
Sadler quickly went public. Article after article ran the story. Chemist says fluorine gas caused 19 smog deaths. Sadler said, chronic fluorine poisoning has been killing people in Denora for a long time. It has left its characteristic trademark in the valley's animals, crops, and vegetation. Both the U.S. Army and the Atomic Energy Commission, now known as the Energy Department, had a secret and vital interest in the outcome of the Denora disaster. If fluoride were fingered for the Denora deaths, it might bring unwanted scrutiny of worker health safety for those in the bomb factories, resulting in damage suits and expensive requirements for air pollution controls. On October 1949, the Public Health Service official report on Denora was released. The 173-page government document appeared to be of similar to that of the Holy Bible, and came to virtually no conclusions. The report's emphasis was on bad weather, and that the disaster was therefore an act of God. The report made no mention of fluoride. Could it be there was a vested interest on the part of the government not to upset the public concerning the potential dangers of fluoride? Although it was Gerald Cox's idea that ultimately led to the endorsement of water fluoridation, the man who gave the official endorsement was Federal Security Administrator Oscar R. Ewing, Alcoa's top Wall Street attorney. 9 months after the Denora disaster, Ewing made a surprise announcement for the nation. The U.S. Public Health Service was reversing a long-held position. The ex-Alcoa lawyer declared that his agency now favored adding fluoride to drinking water across the United States. Wow. Coincidence? When it came time to choose a public relations representative to persuade public opinion in favor of water fluoridation, Ewing chose none other than the father of public relations himself, Edward Bernays.
When they're selling water fluoridation, they didn't just walk out and say it's good for you. They actually hired Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew, to sell Americans on how good it was to have silicon fluoride in the water.
Edward Bernays was the one that created how to control the population through media and through advertising.
Edward Bernays, also known as the father of spin, pioneered the idea of crowd psychology. In 1928, he wrote a book called Propaganda, in which he wrote, if we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, is it not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without their knowing? He called it the engineering of consent. Bernays introduced the corporate giants to crowd psychology methods and polished techniques to manipulate society. He convinced the population to buy on impulse things they didn't even need. In his writings, he concluded that individuals were controlled by 4 basic motivations: self-preservation, aggression, security, and sex. Bernays' belief was that by appealing to any of these 4 motives, it was possible to manipulate the majority of the population into doing almost anything. You could brainwash them into smoking cigarettes, starting war, electing politicians, you name it. And given the proven effectiveness of these techniques, it was no coincidence that the Aluminum Company of America asked Bernays to head the campaign for the fluoridation of the United States water supply.
People like Bernays, were masters of social engineering. His entire thesis, if you will, is that you don't talk to the public in a rational, scientific way. Instead, you appeal to their emotions and you invoke their fears. He was key in getting women to start smoking. He positioned cigarettes as being sexy and individualistic and power to the woman. That was the framing of why women should start smoking.
A consumerist culture was born, and the United States government took notice. U.S. agencies soon adopted Bernays' techniques of manipulation to manufacture the fear of ever-present danger in the minds of the people, to give those in power greater control of what Bernays called the mass mind. He went on to propose in his book Propaganda, those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This statement holds just as true today as it did in the 20s when Bernays first wrote it. Throughout medical science, including dentistry, poison-producing corporations have always been able to infiltrate major institutions and dominate their narrative.
When Christopher Bryson was writing this book, The Fluoride Deception, he reached out to Edward Bernays. Bernays said it was child's play to convince the American public that fluoride was good for them.
While the official narrative rang, the case for fluoride had been proven. Some people weren't so quick to jump on the fluoridation bandwagon.
Because fluoride had been used for years as a rat poison, to kill coyotes, to kill cockroaches. Some of those opposing fluoridation were in fact dentists. And because of their advocacy for safe water, they were censored by the American Dental Association. If they worked for the Public Health Service, they got fired. If they were team players and kept their mouths shut, they got to keep their job. So out of fear, many people who knew better remained silent.
The true story behind water fluoridation can be hard to swallow. The facelift performed on fluoride dating back more than 60 years ago has misled generations. Instead of conjuring up the image of a crippled worker or a poisoned forest, we see smiling children. As a new generation arises, we must sound the alarm yet again. To those who have ears to hear, this film is meant to be a warning. This film will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that fluoride is a deadly poison being added to our water supply. It will further prove that the chemical commonly known as fluoride is the only chemical added to public drinking water to treat you, the individual, rather than the water. The information presented in this film can change your life. It can help protect your health and the health of your loved ones. It will lay out the real facts behind water fluoridation. It will expose the hidden hand behind the curtain, pulling the levers of industry, corporate profit, and public perception. Fluoridation is neither safe nor effective, but rather a fraud. And honestly, one of the biggest hoaxes ever perpetrated in human history.
To say things like tobacco is harmless, fluoride is harmless. Agent Orange is harmless, they say. DDT was harmless. That's the, yeah, GMOs now, they say, are harmless. There's a long history of science selling out to corporate interests while the people are systematically free. And to this day, people still believe fluoride is safe in drinking water, and the majority of dentists still believe it's safe to put in toothpaste and to put in different types of compounds.
Most people in America are persuaded that everybody fluoridates their water. If you live in a town like Albany or Long Island or
I forgot
the vast majority of the population of the world is not.
I got you. You outside now?
Most of the countries do not.
All right, I'm coming out now.
Only about 30.
All right. Yeah.
Countries now that have banned the use of fluoride: China, Austria, Belgium, Finland, Germany, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, Hungary, and Japan. All these countries have said that fluoride, number one, is ineffective and toxic and should not be used.
Come on,
we're still using it. There's something wrong here. I think it's time that we become aware and do something about it.
How come our country that's supposed to be, quote, so smart, uses it? Well, there's something going on here. What does the European Union know that we don't know? Nothing. Nothing. They know the same thing, that's why, but the difference is they're not getting paid off and we are. And so therefore, this is what the only thing I can come up with, because they both have the same facts. They both have the same facts. Fluoride is toxic. Fluoride is not helping your teeth. If it was really helping your teeth, why do we have all these dental problems? It's not at all. How come you can go to primitive societies around the world that never had even seen fluoride, and they have perfect teeth? Why are we having all these learning disorders?
Because we fucking stupid.
We're having autism. We're having all these things we never had before. Well, why don't we ask that question and answer it honestly? Answer it honestly.
98% of Europe does not fluoridate.
Only 8 countries in the world have more than 50% of their population drinking water. America, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, Israel, Singapore, Malaysia, and Colombia. Only 8.
I think Europeans have come to their senses on several issues, not all of them, but on many. GMOs being one of them, and fluoride being another. They've rejected these things because they're looking at the evidence. America tends to be way behind the curve on really recognizing reality in the realm of fraudulent hoax science.
Our CDC and the liars in Washington, D.C. have only had success in countries that speak English for the vast majority of the disposal of their hazardous waste product. That means that you and I and our children in the United States are the largest consumers of hydrofluosilicic acid. Call it what it is. Hydrofluosilicic acid, what is that? Hydro is water, fluo, fluoride, silicic, sand, and it's missing an electron. It's acidic. It'll kill you. You take your hand, dip it in like that, and you're going to die. The hydrofluosilicic acid does not occur in nature. It's a man-made molecule. And it eats through concrete, glass, stainless steel, fiberglass, plastic. You name it, it'll eat it. So why are we putting that in the water?
First tonight, hazmat crews from all across our area responded to a chemical leak this afternoon in Rock Island. The chemical was so strong that it was burning through the concrete there. News 8's Christy Mergenthal has the latest.
It was just before 1 o'clock Thursday afternoon when hazmat crews were called to the Rock Island water treatment plant for a chemical spill coming from this tanker truck. The chemical hydrofluorosilicic acid is used to add fluoride to the plant's water. After several hours, crews were able to clean up the leak, allowing operations to return to normal.
They had to cordon off the area, obviously, but as far as the treatment of the water and the amount of water being used by the public, there's no effect on that at all.
Now, that acid that did spill out is a chemical that they actually use every single day here at the water treatment plant. It adds fluoride to the water. Reporting live in Rock Island, Christy Mergenthal, WQAD Quad Cities News 8.
That's how they transport it. It's extremely aggressive. It'll eat through almost anything, including concrete.
What is labeled fluoride is not naturally occurring fluoride like you might find in the ground. It's actually a collection. It can be over 100 different chemicals, including some radioactive chemicals, including many cancer-causing chemicals, including heavy metals, neurologically damaging elements that are called fluoride. And then this is dumped into the water supply, and the cities have doctors and dentists convinced that this is somehow good for your teeth. Fluoride is really a clever way for industry, the mining industry, the chemical processing industry, aluminum smelting and processing industry, to eliminate their toxic industrial waste without having to pay for it to be handled as industrial waste. They just slap a new label on it, fluoride. They sell it to cities, and the cities dump it into the water supply.
Basically, it's a hazardous waste byproduct of the manufacture of phosphate fertilizer. It's a mining byproduct.
They dig up this rock. This rock is no good as is. So you mix it with sulfuric acid, and this produces soluble phosphate. And that's what becomes the fertilizer.
It's a byproduct that they can't do anything with. It's a poison. So they sell it and make fluoride out of it.
It was a fraud. It was a scam from the get-go. It is a means of getting rid of fluoride. You allow industry to use your water supply to dispose of their hazardous waste. It's a disposal mechanism.
It's a major industrial waste pollutant. They were trying to dump it into the rivers that were going out into the ocean in Florida, and boy, they stopped that. They said, you're polluting. You're killing the fish, which they were.
For 100 years, they decimated the local vegetation, crippled the cattle, damaged the citrus groves in Florida.
It was costing them a fortune to handle this as a very serious industrial waste.
And so they're helping Cargill get rid of their hazardous waste problems. Cargill is the largest privately owned corporation in the world. They were also the largest producer of hydrofluosilicic acid. Cargill at one time had like 90% of the market. When the hurricanes went through Florida, they knocked out the holding ponds, so there was a shortage of hydrofluosilicic acid. And so they reached out to the rest of the world, and now we get it from Mexico and Japan and China, because none of the countries allow fluoride in the water supply. They don't put it in at all. So Obviously, it's piling up in those countries. I don't think we need to be helping other countries out with their disposal of fluorosilicic acid.
Fluoridation is the worst recycling practice in the world. So I support recycling. But to take the hazardous waste from the phosphate fertilizer industry, which cannot be dumped into the sea by international law, and cannot be used locally because it's too concentrated, and to take that product and put it into our public drinking water is sheer lunacy. It's bizarre. I mean, George Orwell, Kafka could have written this play. It's lunacy.
There are 250,000 tons dumped annually in the water supply. Does that sound like a big figure to you? If you had 1 ton and were worth over $1 million, you'd be a poor person at the time you got rid of that ton. It's extremely expensive to get rid of.
Is there anybody that you know that might be willing to talk to us, perhaps a whistleblower, somebody who's been injured, or...
Yeah, the guy wrote a book, Toxic Torts, the tell-all book about the phosphate fertilizer industry. Gary Pittman. He'll tell you the story.
Is that Louisiana?
In Florida. That's where all the phosphate mines are in the United States.
Right. Oh, looks like we're going to Florida, buddy.
Man, where these cars coming from like this?
When I first started working,
shit.
Everything
hitting me, man. How they do? Man, this computer know be doing some bullshit.
There was no safety program.
Boy, you see how this computer just did this shit?
That you had to wear was a hard hat and
it put the car upside down.
Safety glasses. And we didn't wear the safety glasses half the time because it wasn't enforced. The environment was very dirty. The air was filled with dust and toxic fumes.
Oh, this gang know it's full of some bullshit. Did you see this bullshit? This some bullshit. I don't almost feel like playing no more.
It's sometimes longer, sometimes double shift.
I'm done.
In those conditions.
I'm done.
When you're 18, you think you're invincible. Had a physical by their doctor, and he actually put on my application a perfect health specimen. Mistakenly, you tend to believe that somehow you're invincible and blind to step into harm's way without a thought about the future consequences. I started working there when I was 18. I was in excellent health. I quickly rose to a supervisory position. I was making about $50,000 a year. However, my success came at a high price, my health and well-being. My first and last job was working for Occidental Chemical Company in the phosphoric acid plant in the county of Florida.
Gary.
I mean, the car went stuck up on the side of the motherfucking building. That's the third time y'all gave me that. I ain't got
what happened to me. Co-workers here in this county. It kind of gives the inside look at a phosphate plant, mainly the chemical plant where phosphoric acid is made.
Former employees of Occidental Chemical Corporation have filed a lawsuit against the company. They say they have life-threatening diseases because the company did not follow safety procedures.
Paige, they have diseases like leukemia, emphysema, and toxic brain syndrome. For years, doctors struggled to diagnose them, but finally they found a common link. It was the phosphate plant they all worked for. Gary and several other former employees are suing Occidental for failing to provide adequate safety education and gear. One woman's husband died of bone cancer before his battle could make it to court.
They messed up my life. They messed up everybody's life, and they continue to mess up other people's lives. They need to come in and realize and admit to what they are doing.
When Gary Pittman filed a lawsuit against Occidental Chemical Company, he knew what he was getting into. Occidental was a mammoth organization and no stranger to litigation. It was Occidental that had been responsible for one of the most horrendous environmental tragedies in American history, the Love Canal.
President Carter declared a state of emergency today in the Love Canal area of New York's Niagara Falls, where toxic chemicals were discovered oozing from the ground.
My 3 kids were born with birth defects. My wife's had cancer.
This was a site that literally is best described, orange goop, toxic soup is what it has been with Bridget. You had 80 different chemicals. This very bad stuff was in these people's backyards, was literally seeping into their basements.
Health officials are urging more families to move, but that's not as simple as it seems.
Between the years of 1947 and 1953,
The Hooker Chemical Corporation, which is a subsidiary of Occidental Chemical, used the Love Canal section of Niagara Falls as a dumping site for toxic waste.
Today, we write the final chapter of the environmental disaster called Love Canal. In doing so, we make clear that when people make a mess of our environment, they should and they will be held responsible for cleaning up their mess.
The EPA concluded that Occidental dumped millions of tons of hazardous chemicals and then sold the property to the Niagara Falls School District for $1.
In papers to be filed in court in Buffalo this afternoon, the Occidental Chemical Corporation will agree to pay $129 million.
In the end, Occidental was out of pocket a total of $200 million for damages and settlements, not including court costs and the millions they spent defending themselves.
These kind of dangers no longer will be tolerated by the American public. The day of discarding hazardous materials indiscriminately and haphazardly is over.
There must never be in our country another Love Canal. Thank you very much.
Why they call it a Love Canal? That's some stupid ass bullshit.
Is far less severe.
Because it wasn't giving no love, it was killing. Should have been called a debt canal.
Disregard for environmental issues. In the summer of 1979, the New York Times reported that Hooker's plant in White Springs, Florida, was convicted of polluting the air with fluoride. Even more damning were the copies of corporate memorandums passed among Hooker executives in which it was revealed that Hooker's top echelon knew and approved of the pollution violations. Finally, Hooker Company officials admitted to accidentally poisoning local water supplies, not only at the New York location, but at their Michigan and California plants. The White Springs plant that Gary Pittman worked for not only was polluting the air with fluoride, but it also dumped tons of waste on their own property. In a leaked inter-office memo obtained by an insider at Occidental's White Springs plant, reveals 25 different waste disposal sites buried on the property. This highly classified document lists the hazardous, carcinogenic, highly fluoridated toxins that are all buried in the site and are still there today. Gary Pittman knew that he was about to embark into a David versus Goliath scenario. Occidental was not to be trusted. They had been known to buy and intimidate officials. They provided financial support to the campaigns of certain political candidates and owned judges. Gary had only 12 lawyers against Occidental's prestigious law firm,
Owned judges.
which at the time consisted of 540 of the nation's top lawyers.
If they can be paid
However,
for.
to his benefit, Gary had the documents to prove his case. He also had a stellar record within the company and was known as a company man. He was a loyal and hardworking employee. The last thing he had ever imagined doing was to sue the very company that had provided him such a good life. In spite of this, Gary felt as though he had no choice. He was sick and couldn't work. So Gary named a price that could make him go away, and Occidental accepted. In the end, Gary settled out of court with Occidental, but his health problems still linger. The phosphate industry is one of the biggest industries in Florida. It brings in billions of dollars each year in profits. Television ads and billboards often portray strip mining as a wholesome industry that creates jobs and feeds the world. However, a closer look reveals the extreme toxicity to our environment and health.
Paul, I think what you need to do is get some aerial shots of that plant. Because you cannot see the devastation going on from just riding down the road. If you could get some aerial shots of that plant, I could point out what's going on, what's happening, you know, and point out where a lot of the pollution is going on and stuff like that. What people don't realize is this is where hydrofluorosilicic acid starts, because you have to mine the rock, you have to make the phosphoric acid. Hydrofluorosilicic acid is made from the fumes off the phosphoric acid. then it's put into the city's drinking water. I worked out there my whole life, basically, and I never seen that good a shot.
You don't see this on Google Earth. I mean, you just see an overview and you get the idea that those are there, but...
Yeah, what you see here is, you know, the common person never sees this. They don't really want you to see it either, because then you would know how much devastation, you know, there is at these plants. So, you know, what's so good about it is the general public's going to get to see this in this new film, and they can, you know, they can decide, you know. Like I said, that's where your hydrofluorosilicic acid starts. That's the way they're mined. The overburden, they take the overburden off to get to the ore.
Basically, they take a nice forest area, they cut down all the trees, they burn all the stumps, and they take all the topsoil off.
The overburden is topsoil, subsoil, clays, until they get to the ore.
This right here is just... They've already dug it all out.
Yeah, they've mined this, and as you can see the forest in the background, and you can see the huge chunk of land that they have mined. The phosphate lobby is very, very powerful. You know, it's a sad situation. It's devastating to the earth. This water, this coffee-colored water, it's just hard to describe how bad it is. You know, when you call it water, it's not really water. It's so laden with so many different chemicals, and it contains many elements such as cadmium, chromium, mercury, nickel, beryllium, arsenic, fluorides, lots of fluorides.
Lead, and I heard it even has it has radioactive elements.
It is radioactive. Uranium-238, radium-226. It also has traces of polonium-210. Very contaminated stuff. A lot of people don't realize that this is some of the worst contamination at a phosphoric acid chemical plant. Where this was all located, it was wetlands. If you have a wetland, you'll have a heck of a time trying to get a permit to go into a wetland, you know, to do anything. You know, if you want to dig a pond or whatever, they're not going to give you a permit. But somehow these people got permits to dig up all this wetland, and they claim they'll reclaim it, but it'll never be reclaimed like it once was. It's just, there's no way. And they will reclaim just enough land, and they'll have a little show place so visitors, and they can go show them what they've been doing. Yeah, we've mined this out, and now this is what we've done. And you know, for what they've destroyed out there, you know, what a 10 or 15 or 20 acre plot they've reclaimed. Nah, they're not going to reclaim it. What they'll eventually do, and this is just my prediction, is they'll change the name of this place, and they'll form a corporation, and they'll call it something like White Springs Phosphate. And then when they finish mining out the rock, they'll bankrupt. Up here on the right, we're going to have the administration offices. They used to be in the chemical plant when they moved. They used to eat the pantyhose off the women's legs. Wow. It says, to whom it may concern, I worked at the above named company, Occidental Chemical Company, White Springs, Florida, in 1968 and part of 1969. Our accounting department was located in the admin building, which at that time was located at the chemical plant. Many mornings when we employees would get out of our vehicles, women, our pantyhose would dissolve off of our legs. It was explained to us that it was a chemical fallout, not to worry. Our boss would see that each of us girls would get $1 to get us another pair of pantyhose. The chemicals also would eat small pit holes in the paint on our vehicles. Years later, they moved the admin building away from the chemical plant to out by the main road. And there's several more names here of other girls that could testify to this.
So there's three things you can see from the space station, and that's the Great Pyramids of Egypt, the phosphogypsum stacks of Florida, and the Great Wall of China. That's how large they are. They have them in South Florida and Central Florida that are 400 acres big. It's a huge operation. They dig cubic tons of rock a day.
What is the water up there?
The pond water is water they use for the process, and it's recycled. The water is used over and over, and it gets stronger and stronger and more contaminated.
How do they contain it? Just by building a dam like that?
Dam around it, and that's what I was fixing to tell you. There's no liner under that stack. It's right on top of the ground, and it is leaching.
Sure it is.
Into the groundwater.
Now, I read somewhere about a sinkhole that took place.
The reason the sinkhole developed is because the acidic water eating away the limestone. And once the limestone gives way, you're in the groundwater. Wow. Because in Florida, when you drill a well, you have to go through the limestone to get to the air. Sure. That 84 million gallons fell through in there. It contaminated all this water around.
It had to have.
Like I said, it's just a matter of time before, you have a sinkhole like that. It's just a weak point. Wherever there's a weak point in the cavity in the limestone is where the ground bottom falls.
Eventually going to happen.
Yeah, in all of them.
In all of them. It's just a massive, massive operation.
Yes, it is, and if you'll see there's sections in this phosphogypsum stack. When the sinkhole caved in one of these, it was one of these sections. It wasn't all of it. Only that one section was 87 million gallons. Whoa. You could multiply that times 4. That's just a lot of toxic waste to be going into the aquifer.
In addition to this recycled toxic water up there in those ponds, in addition to that, they take in fresh water too.
Well, of course, they use a lot of fresh water because, see, this is the main thing that they don't want you to know. Is what they call the water balance. It just makes them nervous if you start talking about the water balance. What do they add back when they need water if it's leaching? Right. It's going away. So they have to add some fresh water to keep the process going. Right. The phosphate industry uses more fresh water than any other industry in the state of Florida. And sometimes they have to release water out of those toxic ponds. Where do they put it? They put it in the creeks and it runs into the Swanee River. And what they do to it is lime it to bring the pH up so it don't kill the fish immediately. The Swanee River, they claim, is a pristine waterway. But if you ask the Fresh and Game Water Commission in Florida, they'll tell you not to eat over one fish out of that river a month. Because of lead and mercury and chromium and cadmium. They won't tell you that, and that's why.
Yeah, that's why.
This is just a lot of the documentation I've reached through the years. What really caught my eye is, like we had talked about earlier, the 1972 through 1979, what's represented by main data. And they charged me $575,000 for emitting 10 times the amount of fluoride allowed in the law. And I was working there when that was going on, and the fumes were just unbelievable. It fit
What you see, girl?
the glass on your windshield, making it foggy with etch and
Alright. Hanging
and
painting. I'm alive.
Back in the 60s,
Huh?
they realized
Uh-oh.
very toxic.
The phosphate company
Good, huh?
pretty much polices themselves.
And then
They have their own crews do their process, all the other environmental things. And, that's kind of like the fox watching the hen house. And I have been involved where they would go up and test the stack and come down and tell me something's wrong. this fact.
Oh, I'm just giving you a light. Make sure you give it back because I don't want to lose it.
Oh,
I just bought. I just bought
I
one.
have also
Ask me
been
where that.
wanting to go
I don't even know how I find out one day. But I know because it's not the right color.
open.